alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello and welcome to our continuing series, Islamic Finance, with Sheikh Shady Al-Suleiman from Sydney, Australia, a researcher in the field of Islamic economics. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sheikh, we talked in the previous episodes about the concepts of economics in Islam, the components of financial transactions, the principles that guide Islam's view. You focused and emphasized on the all-important issue of staying away from riba, that big disease. Allah promised war on those who practice it. You talked to us about the main differences between Islamic banking and the traditional banking system of nowadays. We also talked about means of financing small projects or buying house or small enterprises in Islamic bankings. And we want to tackle here, Sheikh, if you will, the issue of stock market trading. Nowadays, trading stocks has really become popular around the globe and even in the Middle East region and across most Muslim countries that only launched stock markets about 10 or 20 years ago, namely Saudi Arabia and others, key big Muslim countries. And this issue has been so sensitive and so gadali, so it brought around a lot of debate, so debatable. Many talked about whether, just the idea of the stock market itself is halal or haram, and many, of course, agreed that it is halal on conditions. So we want to know from you, what are the conditions that make it halal?
Allahu alam, in my view, it is okay with regards of conditions, of course. Now, obviously, what's the stock market is when you pay something or you are buying a certain, you are buying a share in that company. This is it. You are paying money to buy a share in this company. And obviously, the company has many shares. Each share has a value according to the stock market. Now, the scholars see that share that you buy in the company is like you're a partner in that company, or like you are buying a product of that company. Now, as long as that what the company that you are buying or you are involving into stock market is not involved in haram, such as it's not a company of alcohol, it's not a company of haram meat, it's not a bank that's it's involved in riba. So that's one thing. The other thing that I know where my money is going, so the company informs me about the details of where my money is being invested and so on, and that I am involved with the profit and the loss. So these are the main conditions that the scholars put with regards of the share market. But what happens that you find many Muslims are very careless where they invest their money in the stock market, whether it's a halal or haram company, or at the same time, they also don't know where the money is going. So they just put their money in the stock market and they don't know what the company or that company they have a share in, what the company is doing, what they've been investing and so on.
And would that be described, that act you mentioned, would it be described as speculation or gambling?
It's, look, I'm not going to call it speculation or gambling. I'm just going to say it's un-Islamic for us to put or invest our money into area in which we're not clear of. Okay? Again, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam naha an bay' al-gharar. The Prophet alayhi salatu forbid bay' al-gharar, which is an ambiguous contract that's not clear. The share market, the company that I'm investing my shares in must be very clear with me what they're doing with my money. And I should also know what's happening with my money, not just be careless. And I, as a Muslim, I should check that am I involving myself or putting my money into a halal company, into a company that's dealing with halal, such as company into building or in mining or into clothing or so on, or am I putting my money into a bank, for example? Because we know the banks one of the dominating companies in the share market.
Indeed.
Or, for example, putting my money into a company of alcohol. And, in the West, those companies are also big companies.
Well, some scholars have admitted that, most companies, even companies that work in a mainly halal field, have financial transactions with banks, or might have, a certain percentage of their money in banks. They might be non-Islamic banks as well in our region here. So in that case, what would be the ruling, knowing that some scholars have said that this is okay as long as that money being invested into the non-halal field doesn't exceed a certain percentage. That is, of course, definitely is less than 50%. I don't know whether it was 10 or 30 or whatever, but that was the
That's
view.
a very good point, Brother Muhammad. And we have that very common in the Western countries, in which, for example, I'm investing in a company that this company deals with riba. Or I give you a more typical common example. I am renting a house from this owner, that the owner bought that house on riba and is paying off the mortgage. So I'm paying him the rent, and what he's doing with that rent, he's paying off the haram riba or the haram mortgage. What do we do? Now, obviously, there's two things I want to talk about. From here, it's not my duty, okay, when I deal with someone, it's not my duty to investigate or search about where he's getting his money from on that. Okay, when I want to buy something, when I go to the shop, for example, I don't have to investigate, is that shop based on riba, not based on riba. I don't have to get into those details. I deal with people the way they are. If they tell me they are dealing with riba, that's when I, think about or maybe withdraw dealing with them. But I don't have to investigate and ask about what people do and where they get the money from. So, for example, when I went to rent my house, I don't have to ask the owner, are you paying a mortgage on this house or not? I don't have to ask that. That's one. The other thing is umum bil-balwa. What's umum bil-balwa means it's a common thing that's spread everywhere. In the West, it's spread everywhere. If you want to tell me, for example, not to rent a place from someone who's paying a mortgage on that place that you're going to rent, then I'll never live anywhere. I'll be on the street. It's something impossible. If you want to tell me don't work for a company that's not dealing with interest, well, what company doesn't deal with interest? All companies, all businesses, they've got somewhere. So you are putting yourself in a very tight area. And you are stuck with dealing. So I have to work for this company, even though that company deals with riba. But as long as the services that this company provides is not riba. Okay. So, for example...
As long as it's not its main
It's not the main field. So, for example, I work in a supermarket, and the supermarket is selling things which are acceptable Islamically, but that supermarket deals with the banks on riba. Well, I deal with the supermarket, and it's not my job to look into that.
Right. Sheikh, you know that there has been a phenomena as of late, especially when stocks in the world before the financial crisis were flying, and some people were making fortunes out of it, that you saw a lot of youth, especially in the Arab and Muslim world, get really into this, perhaps leaving their jobs, perhaps neglecting important aspects of their lives, just to trade into stocks and stuff like that. And of course, when the big backbreaker came during the financial crisis, a lot of people lost everything, and a lot of people lost most of what they had, and we've seen bad social repercussions for this activity. So from that perspective, how would we look at trading stocks at this moment in time?
We mentioned in one of the episodes that risk is always there in trade. Regardless, risk is always there. When you buy, when you sell, when you're in partnership, when you're in mudaraba, when you're in murabaha, there's always a risk. What the Sharia does is it minimizes as much as it can, it minimizes that risk. This is what the Sharia does. At the same time, one of the morals of a Muslim, that the Muslim relies on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Muslim does his job and leaves the rest to Allah Azza wa Jal. A man came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and he said, "O Messenger of Allah, my camel, do I tie it or I or I let it loose and rely on Allah Azza wa Jal. So the Prophet Muhammad said, no, tie it and rely on Allah. Combine between the means and the reliance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet ﷺ also says, عَجَبًا لِأَمْرِ الْمُؤْمِنِ إِنَّ أَمْرَهُ كُلَّهُ خَيْرٌ إِنْ أَصَابَتْهُ سَرَّاءَ شَكَرَ فَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُ وَإِنْ أَصَابَتْهُ ضَرَّاءَ صَبَرَ فَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُ وَمَا ذَلِكَ إِلَّا لِلْمُؤْمِنِ. The Prophet ﷺ said, amazing to the believer. If something good or beneficial comes to him, he thanks Allah for it. And if something harmful or bad comes to him, he has patience. And the Prophet ﷺ said, this is only for who? For the believer. This is the morals of a believer. If a believer, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him $100 a day, he thanks Allah for it. If Allah gives him $1 million a day, he thanks Allah for it. If he gets half a dollar a day, he also thanks Allah Azza wa Jal for it. This is the life of the mu'min. So I should not revolve my life only if I'm rich, I'm happy. But if I'm not rich, I want to, turn around, I want to commit suicide, as so many people did that. They committed suicide because they lost in the market. See, this is the lack of iman, and that's why our main motive in trades, when it's the reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is our main motive. This is our main push.
Should we say from the religious point of view that people who get into this field should be educated well enough to work in it? Because if they are not, then they would be taking a huge risk. And you said many times that our religion really, especially in economic dealings, wants to to manage risk in a very good way and limit it, and it doesn't like that fancy gambling type of risk.
The scholars always say, if someone wants to go to the market, once someone wants to enter the market, wants to enter the business, must go and do a course in the trades, in the market. Don't go into the market before you know what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. And these are the teachings of the Salaf, the predecessors, that before someone enters the market, go and learn what's halal, what's haram, what's acceptable, what's not. And not only that, it's not just about knowing halal, haram, getting the Islamic spirit. That alhamdulillah, my income at the end of the day is from who? From Allah Azza wa Jalla. So if I win, alhamdulillah. If I lose, alhamdulillah. So this is a very important point, because you do find a high percentage of social breakdown amongst business people. A high percentage of those who commit suicide amongst business people, because they've attached their life on money. So if money grows, they grow. And if money falls, they fall. And that's not the quality of the mu'min. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was offered by Allah Azza wa Jal the valley of Mecca full of gold. And what did the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam say? He said, Ya Allah, no. I'd rather eat one day and thank you for it, and starve one day and have patience. So this is the quality of the mu'min. At the end of the day, I do and take by the means, and I leave the rest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, for you to grab your axe and go and collect timber, it is a lot more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than you asking people. This is the encouragement. Rely on Allah Azza wa Jal and do what you have to do. And he says alayhi salatu wasalam, لو أنكم تتوكلون على الله حق توكله لرزقكم كما يرزق الطير تغدو خماصا أو تروح حماصا وترجع بطانا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, if you rely on Allah Azza wa Jal the way you should be relied on, Allah will sustain you the way He sustains a bird. Early in the morning goes with an empty stomach, comes back with a full stomach. This is the life of the Muslim, and this is the life of the Muslim merchant, and this is the life of the Muslim businessman. At the end of the day, I take by the means, and the rizq is on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Wa ni'ma billah. Sheikh, dear viewers, we'll take a short break here and come back for the second part of this, our 7th episode in our series, Islamic Finance. Stay with us.
Ask Huda.
Dear brothers and sisters, welcome to a new edition of Ask Huda.
I have 2 questions.
Please go ahead. You can read it in Arabic, and you can also understand the meaning in your own language. The different tafsir and the interpretation of the meanings of the Quran are available in almost every language that exists on earth by the grace of Allah. The water of Zamzam is for whatever intention you drink it with. Salih from Egypt, his father has the way, and he asked about how can he help him. Very good question.
Can we give a zakat to any of the dawah centers?
The ibadah, or the act of worship, is a part of the unity of worship. It has to be paid to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in accordance with the guidance of his Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh once more. Now, Sheikh Shady, it is obvious that, when they made stock markets at the very beginning, I mean, one of its main goals was to get cheap financing for companies that do work in projects that would benefit the entire society at the very end. That's one of the goals. And of course, the redistribution of wealth across everyone. But the way the markets worked these past years, and especially during the financial crisis and after, well, before the financial crisis, it seems, some people saw it this way, that the rich were getting richer and the poor were getting poorer. And once the breakdown came, then everybody, even the rich, were really affected and lost some of their money. But in the end, there was a general consensus, even in America, the masters of this financial market thing, there was a feeling that this it got too much carried away, and it was more of a casino, a gambling casino more than anything else, and that it didn't really help, for instance, boost production or for a fair distribution of wealth, but in fact it hurt everybody. So from that standpoint, of course, what happened nowadays is not really the end of the story for the markets. They might have their good days as they had before, but from that standpoint, what would our great religion see in this?
One of the conditions that the scholars also add when it comes to stock market, that the company that I'm investing in or buying shares must be a company that exists. One of the things that we've heard, a lot of the companies on the stock market were just a ghost company,
exactly.
A company that did not exist. And that's why it's the duty of the investor or the Muslim who wants to invest in that is to research and do those research, And as the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ also says and describes that the believer is kayyis fatan, he's smart and aware. He is smart and aware. A lot of times that you find people in the market are deceived, not because the seller is a deceiver, but also the buyer is not smart, or maybe I don't want to use the word fool, but maybe not smart or wise enough. And we know that a very common saying, they say in the Arabic world, they say al-qanun la yahmi mughaffalin, that the law does not protect fool people. A Muslim should be aware and cautious. A Muslim should be aware and cautious. And that's why when a man came to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ complaining to him about how he's always been deceived or cheated in the market, the Prophet ﷺ told him, when you go to the market and you buy something, say, Allahumma la khalaba, or Allah, or he said, he'll say to them that there's no deception. Okay, I'm asking Allah, I'm relying on Allah that you are not deceiving me, that you are not deceiving me, which means a contract between him and the seller, that if there's any deception, he'll return it back. So as a Muslim, I should, as we mentioned in a previous episode, that there's one thing I should be cautious of as a Muslim, that I should be aware where I invest my money in,
that's very
and also
clear,
knowledge.
That's very clear, but the problem is that, those guys who were really controlling things seem to be so smart, they outsmarted everybody, even governments. And I mean, even the US administration in the end, was firing back at these banks, that misled everybody. Even Greece, which is got into a financial crisis, is saying, that this X or Y or a company or big financial institution or rating agency got us fooled. So, and we are seeing nowadays, suits filed against those big names we kept hearing about for 10 and 20 years during the good days. So there was a lot of trickery out there. There was a lot of hitting under the belt. Of course, the world is trying to regulate things now, so this wouldn't be repeated. But in an atmosphere like this, I need not ask you about the practices of those who fooled everybody, because this is very clear, what would be Islam's ruling on it. But I need to ask you about, in this atmosphere, would business in general be encouraged?
Yeah, Brother Muhammad, say the unfortunate thing is that this system or this capitalism system that we live in protects those people who are causing this corruption. It is a corrupt system that protects corrupt people, and this is the unfortunate thing. But in an Islamic law, if someone does something like that, there's an Islamic law there, and there's a judge, and the judge will bring this person forward, and the judge will make a very heavy penalty or a severe verdict on this person. In the past, and this is the Islamic way of living, the scholars and or the imams or the khulafa in the past, they will make an Islamic court in every market. Where there is a market, there's an Islamic court, and the judge is a qualified judge in Islamic financial matters and trades. And whenever there's a dispute, the court is just down the road. People go and sort the disputes and resort to a Muslim judge or an Islamic judge in an Islamic Islamic verdict or Islamic Sharia law, ruling, and deal with those matters. This is how it used to be. Every market there's an Islamic court. So if such thing happens,
and that's
in
why
Islam,
Muslims were ruling the world at
yeah,
one
of course,
stage.
and that's why you would not hear of those. You rarely hear of this big corruption happening or monopolizing until people start to drift away from the religion. But as long as people were following Islam and this system was established, you only hear of the prosperity and the flourishing of the Muslim state and the Muslim trades. And we know that in after the Islamic state expanded to the east and the west after the Khulafa, we know that the Muslim world was the center market. Was the trade center of the world. And the Europeans used to look up to the Muslim tradesmen and merchants, and from the east the Chinese and that used to come and deal with the Muslims. So it was a center point.
Right.
What made that center
got
point?
many non-Muslims into Islam.
Of course, and what made that center point is because we are following strict rules of the Islam, of the Quran and the Sunnah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that minimizes that risk, minimizes the dispute, and benefits everyone.
Perpetrators
and benefits everyone, and holds those perpetrators or holds those corrupt people into account. Like it's in an Islamic state, someone deceiving someone else would not go run away from anywhere. Even at the same time, in Islamic state, the form of riba would not even exist. So it's hard to see something like that happening, because the whole concept of riba, in which we know that capitalism is based on riba, and everything that's based either on riba or unclear matters, okay, this is where you find Islam rejects that.
Very clear, Sheikh. And unfortunately, this field, stock market trading, has a lot of tricks. There are issues of transparency, issues of those companies issuing false data, issuing of insider trading, those who know the information, so they deal. And we've heard about a trader, I think, who cost his big bank $7 billion or something, one single person. Very recently, and there are also these hidden secret accords between certain parties, or agreements to fix the price of a certain.
It's a monopoly, Brother Muhammad. It's a monopoly amongst the rich people. It's a monopoly amongst politicians, and they're just becoming more rich, more powerful, and the poor is becoming more poor and poor. They've been talking about the third world countries and supporting them, and for the last 10 years you only hear about those countries becoming more poor and more poor, So and they've tried so many systems, and they've tried so many things. Islam is the solution, and not only solution through just buying and selling, through way of life. The zakat is one, the sadaqat is one, the waqf is one. All this is the way of life. If people follow that, path, then there'll be no problem when it comes to poverty. People live in a peaceful, equal, respectful life. And the interest of the individual is looked after, and the interest of the public is also looked after. But with such current system that we have, it's the interest of the individual. Interest of the individual, where you find one person has enough wealth has enough wealth, more than a full government, more than a full country. What sense does that make? It does not make sense.
Indeed. And indeed, Sheikh, and we are living in a world, when the poor countries you mentioned, unfortunately did not benefit in the good days of the developed nations. And when the developed nations got into their crises, they were so preoccupied with solving their own problems that again, those poor countries suffering from food security issues or other problems, again are suffering now from a lack of funding. And we've heard heads of several humanitarian organizations complaining that they were promised money, but they never saw the money before the financial crisis or after the financial crisis.
Yes, yes, because Islam is the way of life in all aspects, not just when it comes to buying and selling, but in all. And when we talk about Islamic, when we talk about Islamic economy, we don't just refer to buying and selling. We refer to as a finance system, a full finance system that covers all aspects.
And takes care of everybody.
Yes, when we talk about the zakat, when we talk about the mirath, the inheritance, when we talk about, the kharaj, the taxes that, the minimal taxes that the Sharia had put down for certain type of people. When we talk about
there was a time, Sheikh, during Muslims' history that there was not a single poor
yes,
Muslim,
and the Prophet Muhammad
and that
spoke
Baytul Mal
about
was
it.
full of
Yes,
money.
the Prophet spoke about this moment in which a man will go with a bag of gold looking for someone to take it, and no one will take it. Everyone's rich. Why? Because that system, the Islamic finance system worked. And everyone was comfortable and convenient.
It's going to happen, but we hope we'll live to see it.
Ameen.
Ameen. Sheikh Shady Al-Suleiman from Sydney, Australia, thank you very much, and looking forward to see you in the upcoming episodes of Huda TV's series on Islamic finance. Dear viewers, do stay with Huda TV until we meet again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.